What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. I finally have everything that I need for the 3.7 intake manifold swap. This manifold is coming from a 2011 Acura MDX. I also have the matching throttle body. There's a significant difference in bore size, so we should see some performance gains. Both are all clean, ready to go. Now, originally I wasn't gonna paint the manifold because I'm gonna keep all my engine bay plastics on, but I took the time to paint it and it ended up looking so dope. Removal and installation is pretty straightforward besides relocating the IAT sensor, but I do have a solution for that and I'll show you guys in a little bit. So why are we doing this? By swapping in the bigger intake manifold, we're adding more air and that should equal more power. In theory, we should gain about 5-10 horsepower, but more importantly, I'm anticipating better throttle response. This is untuned, unfortunately, so we can't take full advantage of the upgrade, but still an upgrade nonetheless. Before we get into it, let me show you guys the full setup. Alright guys, here's the new 3.7 setup. It's all clean, freshly painted, looks so good. For cleaning, I basically gave it a hot bath, sprayed it with purple power, used a variety of brushes to agitate all those carbon deposits off, and for painting, I masked off all the areas that didn't need painting, scuffed it up real good with a nice scotch pad, sprayed some high temp paint and clear. Came out looking really good, guys. I'm not gonna lie, came out looking really good. So I might not install the engine cover when I'm done with the install. And this is gonna be the current setup: the J37 intake manifold into the thermal gasket, into the J37 throttle body, into the coupler that will go right here. Not sure if I want to have the bung going up to the side or facing down, and then the thermal gasket on the bottom. Now that I show you guys the new setup, let's go over the old setup. It's pretty damn dirty. I don't clean it, like I said. Looking around, it's not much that we have to disconnect. So this is going to be my first time taking the intake manifold off. Eventually I'm going to be taking this off so I can work on the valve covers. I don't think it's leaking, but getting a little bit closer to 100K, and I'm expecting it to leak anytime soon. But this is basically the 3.2 setup. 3.5 setup is pretty much the same. So if you guys can get the 3.5 intake manifold off Type S, definitely do it. It's gonna still get a performance gain. I think the materials are different also. And here's the IAT sensor. This is gonna have to be relocated. So before we install the 3.7 intake manifold, we do have to remove the old one. And since we already have the cold air intake, it should speed up the process a little bit. I know we had to take this top plate off and there should be a few bolts inside. I think all these are 10 mils. All these right here. Looking like there's a bunch of hoses, air hoses, coolant hoses. There's a sensor right here that we have to disconnect. Right there's another sensor. Over here, I do have to steal a couple bolts off the throttle body because it did not come with it. It's not too bad of a removal process. Install should be the same as removal. All right, I'm ready to get this thing out. Let's go. Alright guys, so I'm at this point where I'm at the throttle body. It's a little bit tough to see. As you can see, you're like right there. If I can get a close-up on it, these little two hoses, coolant hoses, they're a little bit hard to get to. So I think I'm gonna take off the throttle body first and then kind of rotate it and then try to take the hoses off. I think that's a better way to go about it. Now I think I'm ready for all these bolts, but I think I do want to tackle this first before I tackle these bolts. So let me get going with taking off the throttle body. And just as suspected, it's a little bit easier to take the throttle body off and then rotate it, so you get in between those little hose clamps. Should be easy removal now. All right, took me a little bit of time, but finally got those hoses off. I ended up using a pick, just like this, where I would just use a little pick and kind of rub around the inside just so I can loosen it up. These little hoses are brittle, so if you guys are doing this, definitely be careful. You wouldn't want it to, like, you know, have cracks and then it ends up leaking and all that stuff. So definitely keep that in mind, especially with this. If you're poking at it, you're gonna make holes, so careful in using this pick. Now that we got those two coolant hoses disconnected, we can finally get to the bolts. Let's go. Whoa! I got it out, guys. Took a little bit of finagling, but I got it out. Alright, just got it off, and I did put a piece of cardboard just to prevent anything from going inside the runners. And as you guys can see, it is freaking dirty in there. So it would be a good time to take it off and clean it out, but that is more time consuming than just taking the intake manifold off. So runners are super dirty, but maybe we'll get pour and polish runners in the future. But right now we're just doing the intake manifold. So let's compare the 3.2 to the 3.7, which is right here. I already have it set up side by side. So taking a look at it, first thing I noticed was the top. There's a little bolt for a bracket, and that is pretty much non-existent here, so I got to figure that out. Everything else seems normal. You can see how dirty this looks and how clean this looks. This is a little different. This is like some type of solenoid that's like it makes the butterfly kind of open and close. On this one, it's not on here, but it is on that little top plate. As I said, for the IAT sensor, it is mounted right here, and as you can see, there's nothing there. So that's why we have this to save the day. Another difference is this little female plug right here. The connector is a little different. Hopefully it's not going to be an issue. If anything, I'll just shave it down and whatnot. Biggest difference, guys, the bore size, which is on a throttle body, it's going to be a little different, but it does match the bore of like the whole intake manifold right here. So let's measure the 3.2 real quick. So the 3.2 manifold, the bore size is about a little under 70. 3.7 should be around 80 millimeters. Measure the bore size, you can already see how big it is, and yep, just about 80 millimeters. That's pretty insane, guys. That's the biggest difference between the 3.2 versus 3.7, so this is definitely an upgrade. And coming back to the engine bay, if you guys are doing this, this would be a good time to check your valve covers. I just inspected it real quick, and it doesn't seem like anything is leaking. Valve covers are dirty, which I don't really care, as long as it's not leaking. Taking the cardboard off, you'll see the old gasket, which is like the metal one. You can see it's like pretty burnt out. We're gonna throw in that fresh thermal gasket right now, and it goes on just like that. Bam. Should add a little bit layer of like heat separation and help with air intake temps. And this is the part that's a little different, because in the 3.7 there is no little top bracket. This is gonna have to be at least zip tied for now. We do have to utilize this little air hose. Not the right way to do it, but that's what we gotta do. So I'm just gonna zip tie it over here next to that, and then this will plug in. Then we got this hose. So the top part's all set. As for the intake itself, these hose clamps are a little bit small, and you do see a little bit of a, you know, paper towel, just so that I can prevent anything from going in. Everything else is pretty much plug and play. Installation is the same as removal, so let's get to it. All right, everything's going smooth besides this area, all connected, but it's just dangling, so I'm going to zip tie it. The next issue is right here. This hose isn't long enough, so I'm going to have to steal it from the 3.2. And the last issue is this connector right here. I'm going to have to shave it off or something so that this can fit. Yeah, so as you guys can see, yeah, I just have to make it connect, that's all, but it's roughly the same shape. But those are the little issues I have to figure out. Oh, the last thing was this bolt right here. You guys can see I had to shorten the bolt a little bit. Yeah, there is a little damage because the bolt was a little bit too long, so I cut probably a couple millimeters off. Parabolic bolts on, so let me figure out all these issues and I'll get back to you guys. Alright guys, so it's been a couple weeks, but now I feel I can definitely give you guys a better breakdown of how it all went. I do want to go over some positives and negatives, but before I do that, shout outs to Freddie and the After Dark Signworks crew. They sent me over some dope goodies. If you guys are in the SoCal area and need any decals, logos, wrap, definitely hit them up. Alright, let's go over all the positives. Car runs great, and I definitely feel like it has more power. Usually when doing small performance mods, it's really hard to tell if it did anything or not, unless you dyno it before and after. But I noticed an immediate difference. Really hard to show the difference, and I didn't end up recording a before and after. Number one, I'm never on the road by myself. Number two, I don't have the proper equipment to record a 0 to 60 time or anything like that. But I'll show you guys a quick pull on the street and on the highway. Currently, the wheels on a TL are a little bit on the heavy side, so the car felt a little sluggish before the mod. But after the 3.7 manifold, it's kind of like putting lighter wheels on. Definitely pulls harder and accelerates quicker. The car does sound a little more throaty in the engine bay, and VTEC does sound a little bit more aggressive. And since I had a fresh looking intake manifold, I had to spice it up a little bit in the engine bay, so let's go check it out. Alright guys, it is a little wet, it is raining, but let's take a look. And bam, there it is. It looks so beautiful. And as you can see, I did add a strut bar. Yeah, so I removed the OEM and I had this Ultra Racing white strut bar. Doesn't really make much of a difference, but it does kind of make the engine bay pop a little bit more. Like I said, it's not really much of a difference. As you can see, the fitment is a little weird. Just have to shave a little bit under the plastics and everything should be smooth, and I'll figure that out later. But here it is guys, 3.7 intake manifold. Does look a little bare. I do want to put some type of like vinyl or something on this. And here's a little bit extra bling. I might put like an Acura logo on here. Oh, and one more thing, shout outs to Jonah for selling some Acura TL products. Bam, I got his battery tie down. So shout outs to Jonah. He makes this, he makes a couple other things, and I did buy another one of his items, and that will be revealed in a future video. And remember how this doesn't have a bracket? Yeah, it's hard to tell, but I did zip tie it guys. Definitely zip tied that just to make it secure. This is still a little bit loose. See, as you can see, I can pull it out. Just, yep, yeah, you can just pull it out. Might be able to fix that with like a zip tie or something, but it hasn't popped out while driving. And as for the IAT sensor, you remember the bung, it's actually facing that way, so it's a little bit hard to see, but it's right there. Yep, right there. Unfortunately, the engine cover doesn't fit, so I'm rocking like this, but it's nice and pretty anyways. And this really makes me want to clean up my engine bay, like paint the valve covers, but this is all I'm doing to bling it up for now. Okay, now on to the bad news or the negatives. Remember when I said it took a couple weeks? Yeah, I had a couple issues. Install went pretty smooth, but at first startup, it idled really weird. It idled up and down and it wouldn't let me rev past 3K. And of course, check engine light lit up and the code was P2173. After some troubleshooting and hitting up a buddy of mine's to help out, all signs led to a vacuum leak or a bad throttle body. And yup, it ended up being a bad throttle body. So I had to reinstall the old 3.2 manifold so I could drive the car. I really do daily my TL, guys. Took about a week to get a remanufactured one in, reinstalled the 3.7 manifold with the new throttle body, and the car started up fine with no revving up and down. Was able to rev past 3K, but it idled kind of high, something like 1500 RPMs. I had to do an idle relearn process. I had no idea that was a thing, but after all that troubleshooting, it finally works perfect. The only drawback is it idles a little bit higher than it did before, probably 100 or 200 RPMs more. Not a big deal, but it is something to note. And lastly, gas mileage. I track my gas mileage pretty frequently every time I fill up, and I lost about 1 or 2 miles per gallon. It could be because I'm driving more aggressive, testing out the capabilities of the 3.7 manifold, but it definitely went down. Alright guys, I'm sorry that was a lot of talking, but I did want to be fully transparent, give you guys all the positives and the negatives. Installs can and will go wrong, but after all said and done, I feel like it was definitely worth it. Anyway guys, that wraps it up for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed as always. Catch y'all in the next one. Peace.